Good morning. My name is Ivan Pandev, and welcome to the first devlog entry for HyperMu. HyperMu is an original vehicle dynamics simulator using multi-body physics written entirely in Python. Intuitively speaking, HyperMu is a virtual shaker rig, but with expanded functionality, namely being able to replay recorded lateral and longitudinal acceleration telemetry through a vehicle model's center of mass. For this reason, I sometimes think of it as a 7+2 post shaker rig. It predicts values which are crucial to vehicle handling but are impossible to directly measure in race conditions like instantaneous tire load. So let's go through the workflow in HyperMu. It begins with vehicle parameterization expressed in the YAML file. The user will need to provide detailed information on suspension kinematics, masses, inertias, spring stiffnesses, damper rates, and other properties that create the vehicle model. Then the user from a Python terminal can create an instance of the HyperMu vehicle model using this command, passing in the path to the vehicle properties YAML. And at this step, the user will also be prompted to acknowledge the disclaimer we saw at the beginning of the video, acknowledging that HyperMu is not currently validated for real-world applications. The user accepts this, and the next step is for the user to define the scenario being simulated. This can take the form of recorded telemetry being replayed through the vehicle model's chassis, or it could be unit tests, such as frequency sweeps or curb strikes. Let's leave the input blank for now by calling plot shaker basics and no inputs. This will call the base unit test. We'll run this. And here we'll arrive at the core functionality of HyperMu. The scenario is described in the top left corner, so we can see a sinusoidal longitudinal acceleration and sinusoidal lateral acceleration curve. So this represents a slalom with a curb strike on the inside wheels, just as the vehicle model is exiting the slalom. Straight away, we can see several vehicle properties of the vehicle model playing out here, including the torsional flex of the chassis, described by the diverging roll angles of the chassis attitude plot. We also see damper speeds, instantaneous tire loads, and lateral load distribution. The user can now go back to the vehicle model's parameterization, change settings, and compare the results to their baseline. A common goal here would be to minimize the tire load variation while ensuring that the resonant frequencies don't fall so low that they might be encountered during a telemetry run. In other words, if there's a slalom or road bumps at, say, 1.5 hertz, the user likely wants the chassis model's resonant frequencies to exceed this by some margin. This is where frequency analysis in side-by-side with telemetry replays can be very useful. So let's go ahead and do one of those. Calling the same method, but with a slightly different input, roll frequency sweep, we can specify another unit test. Okay. And the input here is a lateral acceleration on the vehicle model that increases in frequency over time. Straight away, we can see that this model has different harmonic frequencies for the front and the rear axle, again, owing to the torsional flex of the chassis and the different stiffs of the two axles. For the rear axle, this would be at, I would say, approximately 2 hertz, and at the front axle, approximately 3 hertz or so. The different resonant frequencies are also very clearly displayed in the damper speed and the tire load plots. Naturally, the best way to do this kind of analysis would be in the domain space using Fourier transforms, and I do have plans to add this soon. As mentioned, we can also run a test with some recorded telemetry. So we'll use the same method yet again, and this time specify the path to the telemetry file and apply a small smoothing window, in this case, 10 milliseconds. Okay, and this telemetry was gathered on an autocross run on an airfield. So nominally the surface is flat. We could see that represented in the scenario description. But even so, the simulated vehicle model enters the high-speed domain of its damper travel several times. Anything above 0.130 meters per second is past the knee speed on the dampers for this vehicle model. And in the tire load plot, we can see that there's at least 2 instances where the at least one of the inside tires becomes almost completely unloaded. This is also evident in the lateral load distribution graph. So these are areas where the user could focus on to improve the vehicle model's performance even further. Finally, let's talk about how HyperMu correlates to real-world data. To reiterate the disclaimer, HyperMu, again, is not fully validated against real-world data, but there is work done to measure this correlation and to improve it as much as possible. One way to do this is to compare the recorded gyroscopic data to the predicted roll and pitch rate data outputs. So we will call the correlation tool here, pass in the path for the telemetry from the previous command, except we'll apply a larger smoothing window this time. Okay, and the data shown here is treated with a 750 millisecond smoothing window before calculating the correlation. And we see that in the roll mode, we achieve an R squared correlation of 77%, which is reasonably meaningful, especially at the higher roll rates. You can see that there's more significant divergences at around the lower roll rates, which could potentially be explained by noise in the sensor. We have 77% correlation in the roll mode and a very poor 22% for the pitch mode. Potential explanations for this include again, the noise to signal ratio. Look at the magnitudes between the pitch rate and the roll rate. Pitch rate tends to have about half as much magnitude, maybe two-thirds as much magnitude as the roll rate. So that's one explanation. But there's also the positioning and the accuracy of the IMU itself. And of course, I believe the pitch motion modeling can always be improved as well. So all of these things are things I'm looking forward to improving in HyperMu in the near future. So this brings us up to date on the current state of HyperMu. Thank you so much if you watched this far. And I'm looking forward to doing several more videos describing the progress on this project. See you soon. Thank you.